Sherri Aikenhead. Mommy Don't? Yes, from mother to murder. I have to ask, this book's been out for a few months now.
Yes, since April.
You wrote this and you explained why. So just to kind of briefly tell people what it was that brought you to this story about Penny Boudreau.
Mm-hmm. I, like so many Nova Scotians, I was really upset and shocked when I was in court the day that Penny Boudreau in 2009 pled guilty to murdering her only child. And on that day, I thought, I'm going to write a book about this someday because I didn't want Carissa's memory forgotten. And I wanted to better understand who this person was and who Carissa was and what led to this. And so 15 years later, I was able to do that. And it still is very emotional. And since people have shared their feedback with me, I can appreciate that others are it still reverberates in Nova Scotia, this story.
And one of the things that I really appreciated with this story is how you gave some context on the faint hope clause, as Penny Boudreau was one of the last people in this country to be afforded that process under law, which has since been repealed. And we've come past a deadline for her to apply.
That's right. So, in fact, just in the past week, Penny had 90 days after serving 15 years of her 20-year life sentence to try to ask a judge and then a jury if she could be eligible and start applying for day paroles, et cetera, earlier than most people can today. Mm-hmm. As you say, it's been abolished, but she was part of a few hundred that are left that can do that, right. Because her crime was committed in 2008 before it was abolished. As of this week, the Crown has checked and she has not applied for that option. And so I think that's important for the community to know because they have seen Penny going out on church passes. And it's just another element of what's next for Penny. Mm-hmm. So she chose not to do that.
This woman, this convicted murderer who's in prison now, has been given passes to leave the facility where she's at in Truro. And the most recent one came about just in the last week or so as well. Did you just happen across this? Just the timing? Because it was right around the limits of when she could apply for early release.
Well, I think it is interesting. Rather than put herself through a whole jury and before the courts again, she has chosen to go the route of applying for escorted passes, 7-8 hours to go out into the community and visit a friend. This most recent one that just came in last Friday that we've been made aware, she's visiting someone with a chaplaincy who is ill, again through the church. So yes, for the past 4 years, she has continued to apply for these. And I think that in the end, this demonstrates for her where she is in terms of her behavior, and the parole board looks at this and says she never breaches these. So it's all part of her personal development and whether she'll be eligible for day parole in a few years and then ultimately apply to get out for full parole.
It's not a surprise to me that people have a very strong opinion, strong reaction to that. In fact, I saw someone say, well, couldn't this person just come visit her in prison? The details, according to the Parole Board of Canada, is that this person is ill, with the implication being they can't come visit her. That's right. An interpretation.
And I can understand the same parole board, and in fact, one of the same members that's previously granted her a pass is looking at the same information of her behavior inside. But it is very emotional. And one thing I think that was really important in this ruling that just came out is they recognize, if you don't mind me quoting for it, because I think this speaks to the family, the community, and friends that are still hurting and opposed to these passes. Grief and opposition to your release continues to this day. It is unlikely to end. It's important, your role of trust, and it's important you remain mindful that your behavior significantly affected so many people. So that's what we're talking about, Sheldon, how so many people are still so upset. They believe 20 years should be 20 years.
And in fact, the law in Canada says that 20 years might not be an entire 20 years?
Correct. So after the 15-year mark, then you start, there has to be a release plan back into society. Whether you agree with it or not, that is the law. And so the next, these day pass, escorted passes, she always has someone with her going into community. The next step would be getting day parole in a few years if she's, continues to behave, etc. But, some people feel that there's too much over the built in terms of the prisoners' rights. And I understand that. I mean, the justice system is there for the public to comment on. And I'm just trying to help. I guess I included that in the book to explain the process. And I think people have a right to know what's happening with Penny Boudreau.
But I think it's very important to talk about what the process is, because it's very clear the process is set by the politicians who pass the laws that get passed in the assemblies and the House of Commons, and then it's up to the justice system to put that into practice. So, it's the law that says this, not the people in the parole board.
That's true, but we should always be mindful of the victims and what say they have in this process. And this decision did acknowledge that they continue to get letters and receive input from the community, and that the police are opposed to these passes because it does upset the community. So it's a very emotional issue. And I certainly have heard that when I've been doing book readings and talking with people or receiving emails from people, how there's a lot of strong feelings about this. This was a rare, horrible crime in our province.
Well, not just in the province, but anywhere that a
Canada,
mother takes
anywhere.
the life of their child.
Yeah.
An adult or a pre-adolescent teen.
Yeah.
So much of this is about, is prison punishment or is it rehabilitation? And that's the discussion or debate that can happen. But just to kind of bring this back home, you said you wanted this young woman remembered. Mm-hmm. How old would Carissa be now?
Well, she was 12 then. Right. So the women that I talked to who were her friends back then, 3 of them are now 27. And, she's just about to have a birthday if she had survived. One of those young girls at the time reached out to me after the book came out and just talked about how hearing nice things contributed in the book about Carissa, and hearing her grandmother and her family, and hearing a different, making sure that Carissa's memory was honored, really, was important to her, this friend, so that it wasn't just Penny's version in the agreed upon statement of facts. So, I did try to give voice to Carissa through her own diaries, through her friends, through her family, through her community, and touch on the fact of how much this impacted so many people. And we're all seeing that this week as people react again.
And the person who this story is also about, Penny Boudreau, you didn't speak with her. She has not been an interview subject of yours?
No, she hasn't. I reached out twice. Once through a personal letter, and then once through the formal communications that you go through to try to talk to someone, and I haven't heard from her.
And of all the questions, why, that's the biggest one. But what else would you want to know? What else would make sense? What else would help anyone understand they had something so terrible?
I'd like to know, when she stood in court that day and said, "I'm sorry," it left a lot of people wondering, what are you sorry for? Are you, sorry for the, the horrible action you took when you had other options? What does your apology mean to today, 15 years later? Have, you thought about that and taken responsibility for all the lives that were impacted by what happened?
Sherri Aikenhead, Globe and Mail bestseller, first novel, first book. It's quite a testament to a time and a place in a history that is, a big part of that community, the community where I lived, and it's still resonating with people. So thank you for doing the work that went into this and for your incredible attention to detail. It's a very important piece of work, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Sheldon. I appreciate that.